If people don't connect with your message, they won't respond to your voice. That single fact transforms how communication works. Most people speak just to be noticed. Leaders speak so they're remembered. The difference isn't loudness, it's accuracy, clarity, power, and timing. When your voice lacks respect, your ideas lose value. When your words lack weight, your presence can't guide anyone. This audiobook is designed to help you build a voice that earns respect without raising volume. A voice that drives action without trying to impress. A voice that reaches people's thinking and influences their choices. You don't need fancy language, you need solid language. You don't need to say more, you need to say it better. In this chapter-by-chapter guide, you'll learn how to communicate like someone people listen to. Practical, real, straightforward skills you can use right away in daily conversations, intense moments, and leadership situations. This is for those ready to lead, not later, but now. If your words don't lead, nothing will. It begins here. Chapter 1. Take ownership of every word you speak with confidence. That's where leadership starts. If you talk and your words lack force, you're just creating noise, and noise doesn't move people. Noise doesn't shift thinking. Noise doesn't create trust. But when you speak with confidence, when every word feels intentional, people notice. They listen, they lean closer, and most importantly, they remember. Confidence isn't about volume. It's not about showing off. It's about standing behind what you say. It's about believing your message. And if you don't believe it, why would anyone else? Confidence begins when you stop doubting yourself and take full responsibility for every word you speak. Most people speak without commitment. They hesitate. They rely on phrases like, I think, maybe, I guess, or I'm not sure. And every time they do, they weaken their message. They lose their audience. Because the truth is, no one follows uncertainty. No one trusts a message that sounds unstable, and no one is inspired by someone who doesn't trust their own voice. If you want to speak like a leader, you must decide your words matter. Mean what you say it clearly, and own it completely. When you speak, people should feel your seriousness. They should sense your grounding. They should know your words aren't empty. They reflect who you are, what you represent. So how does that happen? It starts by noticing the words you use daily. Most people speak on autopilot. They talk just to fill space. Leaders speak with purpose. They don't waste words. They don't ramble. They don't dilute meaning. They speak directly. They speak honestly. And they carry a presence that says, I deserve to be heard. Confidence in speech also comes from preparation. If you don't understand your subject, your voice will tremble. Your message will collapse. That's why leaders prepare. They think, reflect, and gain clarity, so when it's time to speak, they aren't guessing. They've already done the work. They already know what matters. That's why their words hold strength, because they've been tested in real life. Confidence grows when your words align with your actions. If your behavior contradicts your message, people will notice, and eventually, you'll lose belief in yourself. You can't sound like a leader if you don't live like one, because people trust actions more than explanations. They pay attention to how you live, not just what you say. When your actions support your words, confidence becomes natural. It's earned. And one more thing. Stop apologizing for your truth. Stop shrinking your message to keep others comfortable. Leaders don't speak to be liked. They speak to be clear. They speak to lead. If you're constantly concerned about others' opinions, you'll never say anything worth hearing. You don't need to be rude, you don't need to be aggressive, but you do need to be firm. You do need to be genuine, and that means standing by your truth, even when not everyone agrees. When you enter a room and speak, people should feel it, not because you're loud, but because you're grounded, you're stable. And people sense that you're not guessing your way through life. You've made choices, you've formed beliefs, you've tested ideas, and now you speak from experience, not just opinion. That's what gives your words weight.
It also means letting go of soft language used to protect your ego. Remove the fillers, remove the doubt. If you believe something, say it. If you stand for something, voice it. If something is wrong, call it out. Too many people weaken their voice trying to sound pleasant, but leadership isn't about sounding pleasant, it's about saying what matters, even when it feels uncomfortable. Confidence in speech also comes from being comfortable with silence. Weak speakers rush to fill every gap. They fear quiet, but strong communicators understand that silence holds power. You say something important, then you pause. You allow people time to hear it, feel it, and let it settle. You don't rush, you don't seek approval. You say what needs to be said, then you wait. And that silence speaks as loudly as your words. Here's something you should always keep in mind. Your voice is a tool, not a crutch. You don't speak to prove yourself. You don't talk to sound smart. You speak with purpose. You speak to guide people towards something better. And when you understand that, your voice changes, your tone shifts. You stop performing, you start leading. Because now you're not speaking to impress, you're speaking to create impact. Speaking like a leader isn't about big words. It's not about perfect grammar. It's not about showing off your vocabulary. It's about clarity. It's about certainty. It's about honesty. People follow that. People respond to that. Because in a world full of noise, authentic voices stand out. So if you want to speak like a leader, start here. Own every word you say. Stop giving your voice away. Stop questioning your message. Speak with your chest. Speak from your core. Speak with intention. And every time you do, your confidence grows, your presence grows, your leadership grows. Because when you own your words, you begin to own your space. You show up differently. You carry yourself with a quiet strength. People see it in your expression. They hear it in your tone. They feel it in your presence. You're no longer trying to sound like a leader. You are one, and that changes everything. Chapter 2. Speak clearly so your message is never misunderstood. This is one of the most important habits you can build if you want to lead people, influence them, or simply be taken seriously in everyday life. Clear communication isn't about being fancy. It's not about complicated language. It's not about sounding impressive. It's about being understood. And when people understand you, they trust you. When they trust you, they listen. When they listen, things begin to move. But if people don't understand what you're saying, none of your ideas matter. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how good your intentions are. If your message doesn't land, you lose the moment. You lose connection. You lose respect. And worst of all, people start filling in the gaps. They start guessing your meaning. And people rarely guess in your favor. That's why clarity matters so much. If people don't hear you clearly, they will misunderstand you, and once your message is lost, so is your influence. Speaking like a leader means taking full responsibility for clarity. You don't unload information and expect others to sort it out. You think before you speak. You slow down. You remove the fluff. You stop trying to sound smart and focus on being understood. That's where strong communication begins. Most people never learn this. They speak quickly, they ramble, they assume others know what they mean, they skip steps in explanation, and they leave confusion behind them. Then they wonder why people don't follow them, why trust is missing, why their teams feel disorganized. The answer is simple. Unclear words create unclear minds. If people are confused after you speak, that's not their fault, it's yours. So what does clear communication actually look like? It begins with knowing what you want to say before you say it. If your thoughts are scattered, your words will be scattered. You must think through your ideas. Be specific. Don't speak in vague language. Say exactly what you mean. When you ask someone to do something, say it straight. Don't complicate it. Don't try to impress. Be honest and direct. Clarity also means removing extra words that weaken your point. If 5 words will do, don't use 15. When a message gets buried in too much talking, people tune out. They stop listening. They feel overloaded. And once attention is gone, you've lost them. Leaders protect attention. They get to the point and stay there. Clear speaking means choosing words people actually understand. Don't try to sound smart with technical language. Speak in a way people recognize. Meet them at their level. If you're giving directions to your team, explain it so it makes sense to them. If you're teaching something new, break it down simply, not because they lack intelligence, but because your role is to connect, not confuse. One of the most effective ways to speak clearly is to slow down. When you rush your speech, your words lose impact, sentences blur together, important details get missed. Slowing down shows control, it shows intention, it gives people space to process what you're saying. Fast talking often comes from insecurity. People think speed makes them sound sharp, but leaders don't rush. They pause, they allow their words to settle. That pause draws people in. That pause adds weight to what you say. You also need to pay attention to your tone. Tone carries meaning that words alone can't deliver. You can say the right thing with the wrong tone and still be misunderstood. Or you can say something simple with a strong tone and it lands with force. Tone is your attitude made audible. If your tone is inconsistent, too flat, too aggressive, too unsure, your message loses clarity. People won't know what matters and what doesn't. That's why your tone must match your message. If the topic is serious, sound serious. If it's energetic, sound energized. Don't send mixed signals. Another reason clarity breaks down is trying to say everything at once. You don't need to explain the entire story in one breath. You don't need every detail all at once. Choose the main point and build around it. Stick to one idea at a time. Make it easy to follow. Give people time to absorb what you're saying. Simplicity isn't weakness, it's strength. If you can explain a big idea in few words, that's leadership. Sometimes clarity means repeating your main point once, not 5 times, just once. Not because you're unsure, but because people need time to grasp what matters. You say it clearly, you pause, you say it again with confidence, then you move forward, not in circles, not in loops, straight ahead. You also need to watch how people respond when you speak. Look at their eyes, their expressions. Are they confused, distracted, fully engaged? Your words should pull people in. If they're pulling away, adjust. Real leaders read feedback in real time. They clarify when needed. They ask, does that make sense? Not as filler, but as a real check. And if the answer is no, they don't defend themselves. They explain it again, better. And here's something most people forget. Body language. Your message isn't only your words, it's your posture, your expression, your hands, your presence. If your words say one thing and your body says another, people trust the body. That means standing upright, facing the person, showing you're fully present, not distracted. All of it adds to clarity. Clear communication is built through practice. You don't wait for big moments to develop this skill. You train it daily in normal conversations. You practice getting to the point. You improve your word choice. You ask better questions. You get better at explaining ideas. That's how leaders sharpen their message. Not only through speeches, but through everyday conversations done well. Clarity is earned. It's a skill. It's a choice. Every time you speak, you either build trust or damage it. You either guide people or confuse them, and you carry the responsibility to make your message easy to understand. So stop hiding behind complicated language. Stop hoping people will guess what you meant. Stop rushing your words and hoping they land. Make a new decision today. When you speak clearly. You speak with purpose. You speak so no one walks away confused about who you are or what you stand for. Speak like your words matter, because they do. Speak like someone who knows where they're headed. Speak like someone who's done the work and earned the right to be heard. That's how leaders speak. That's how leaders connect. That's how leaders build something real. And that's the kind of person people choose to follow. Someone who makes their message clear every single time. Chapter 3. Master your voice before you try to lead. This isn't optional, it's essential. Because your voice is more than sound. It carries your presence, your mindset, your energy. And if your voice isn't stable, your leadership will never feel reliable. You can have good intentions, sharp intelligence, strong principles, but if your voice trembles, if it drifts, if it sounds uncertain or unfocused, people will hesitate to follow. Why? Because people don't only listen to your words, they listen to how those words are delivered. Leadership begins with how you show up. and your voice mirrors what's happening inside you. If you're nervous, it comes through. If you're angry, it comes through. If you're unsure, it comes through. There's no hiding it. The more emotional chaos you carry internally, the harder it becomes to speak with confidence and direction. That's why before you step into leadership, before you try to influence anyone, you must learn to manage your tone, your volume, your pacing, and your emotional state. Leaders don't just speak, they hold attention. Not by being loud, not by overpowering others, but by using a calm, steady, grounded voice that communicates, "I'm not here to impress, I'm here to lead." That's the difference. Loud voices want attention, grounded voices earn understanding. And that difference matters. When your voice is controlled, people feel safe around you. They sense that you won't explode, you won't panic, you won't spiral emotionally. You're steady, and that steadiness builds trust. You can't lead if your voice shakes every time you speak. You can't lead if your tone swings with your mood. People grow tired of following voices they can't predict. Unpredictability creates tension, and leadership is not about creating tension, it's about offering direction people can rely on. So how do you gain control over your voice? It starts with awareness. Most people have no idea how they sound. They've never paid attention to their tone. They've never recorded themselves. They don't know if they speak too quickly, too softly, too sharply, or without energy. That's step one, self-awareness. Take time to actually listen to yourself. Are you clear? Are you grounded? Do you sound like someone who believes what they're saying, or someone hoping for approval? The better you understand your voice, the more control you gain over it. You begin choosing your tone instead of letting emotions choose it for you. When you're frustrated, you don't raise your voice, you stay composed and address the issue directly. When you're excited, you don't rush and lose clarity. You hold the energy while staying steady. Leadership requires emotional control, and your voice is where people notice it first. Another key to control is breathing. Most people underestimate how critical breathing is when speaking. Shallow breaths create rushed speech, nervous tension, and unstable delivery. But when you slow your breathing, your voice naturally becomes deeper and more grounded. You don't force it, it settles. It becomes intentional, and people feel that control. Before important conversations, meetings, or decisions, you center yourself, you breathe, you slow everything down inside, and then you speak. Control also means knowing when not to speak. A strong voice isn't only about expression, it's also about restraint. Speaking on impulse leads to regret. It causes damage that takes time to undo. But when you learn to pause, to listen, to think, you speak less, but what you say carries more weight. That's leadership communication. Fewer words, greater impact. Think about the leaders you respect most. They didn't rush, they didn't stumble through their thoughts, they didn't ramble. They spoke with intention. Every sentence had purpose, every word mattered. They weren't trying to sound important, they were grounded, and that grounding gave their voice authority. Real authority doesn't come from titles, it doesn't come from volume, it comes from inner strength. It comes from discipline, and that discipline must be built. You train your voice like any other skill. You practice it, you refine it, not to fake confidence, but to strengthen it. If you speak publicly, prepare beforehand, listen to yourself, make adjustments. If you lead a team, don't speak carelessly or off impulse. Prepare your tone, your delivery, your rhythm. Strong leaders don't leave communication to chance. They treat it seriously because they understand that every word, every inflection, every pause can either strengthen or weaken what they're trying to lead. And remember, your voice isn't only for big moments. It matters in small conversations, in one-on-one talks, in feedback, and in conflict. Every time you speak, people are observing. They're silently asking, can I trust this person? Do they stand behind their words? Are they steady or unpredictable? That trust is built or destroyed by how well you control your tone, your message, and your energy. And energy matters more than most people realize. If your voice carries no energy, people won't feel what you're saying. You can't motivate anyone with a lifeless tone. You can't inspire through flat delivery.
You don't need to be loud, but you do need to be alive. Your voice must carry belief. It must show care. You have to be fully present in your words. Otherwise, no matter how strong your ideas are, they'll fall flat. Leadership also requires managing your emotional triggers. When things go wrong, when people challenge you, when pressure rises, you must hold your ground without your voice cracking or escalating. If your tone shifts every time you're under stress, people lose confidence in your stability. They may respect your intelligence, but they won't trust you when it matters most. Control means staying calm when everything feels unstable. That calmness is what people remember. It helps others remain steady as well. When your voice is trained, your leadership sharpens. You speak with intention, you lead with presence, you guide with strength, and people feel it. They recognize they're listening to someone who isn't speaking just to be heard, but because they have something worth hearing. So treat your voice seriously, not for performance, but for influence. Train it daily, reflect on it, record yourself, ask for honest feedback. Adjust until your tone reflects clarity and strength. Practice speaking under pressure. Practice standing firm without raising your voice. Build a voice that steadies people, moves people, and earns respect without demanding it. Because before anyone follows you, they listen. And before they listen, they judge your voice. Not your accent, not your vocabulary, but the presence, the energy, and the control behind it. When your voice shows discipline, purpose, and steadiness, people feel safe, they feel confident, and they begin to trust your leadership, not because you asked them to, but because your voice proved it. That's how leadership works. That's where it begins. Before you ask others to follow, make sure your voice is ready to guide. Not sometimes, not when it's convenient, every time, in every room, in every moment. Because when your voice becomes steady, your leadership becomes real. Chapter 4. Say words that actually move people to act. That's what leadership communication is truly about. It's not just speaking, it's not sounding smart, it's speaking in a way that creates movement. A leader's words don't just fill space, they shift thinking, they wake people up, they cause someone to pause and see things differently, they push people to take steps they've been avoiding. When you speak as a leader, your words must carry power, not empty hype, but real pressure. Your words should lead to action, otherwise you're just background noise. People hear countless voices every day. They're flooded with opinions, distractions, instructions, and advice, but most of it fades instantly. What sticks is what makes them feel something strong enough to pull them out of comfort and into motion. That's your responsibility. To speak in a way that wakes people up without shouting, to reach not just their ears, but their core. That kind of communication doesn't come from memorized lines. It comes from knowing why you're speaking. It comes from clarity, intention, and lived experience. Before you try to influence anyone, check your motive. Are you trying to impress or create impact? Are you repeating borrowed ideas or speaking from something tested in real life? People can feel the difference between information and truth. Real words carry pressure. They carry weight. They don't float. They land. And when they land, people move.
If you want to move people, speak directly to their pain. Speak to the part of them that's exhausted from excuses. Speak to the frustration they carry but never voice. Speak to the choice they've been postponing. You don't need perfect wording, you need honesty. Truth lands hard. Truth stings, but it also frees. People are surrounded by gentle language. Everyone tells them to slow down, wait it out, stay comfortable, avoid pain. That's not what leadership requires. What they need is someone willing to say, "You've waited long enough. You've been hiding. You've been settling." Not with blame, but with clarity. When someone finally says what needs to be said, people wake up. And you don't move people by explaining too much. Say it once, say it clearly, say it with strength, then let it sit. The moment you drag your message through too many examples, you lose the edge. The point gets buried. Keep it short, keep it sharp, keep it direct. And once you've said it, don't soften it. People don't need comfort, they need clarity. They need something solid to grab onto, not something to overanalyze. If you want action, give them something firm and clear. People don't act on vague ideas, they act on clear direction. Another critical element is urgency. Without urgency, people stay stuck. Your words should carry a sense that something must happen now, not months from now, not when life feels easier, now. Not with panic, but with pressure. Show them what's at risk. If they don't move, what happens? If they stay the same, what do they lose? If they keep waiting, what's the cost? That's how action is triggered, not through fear, but through truth. The truth that staying still is often the most dangerous choice. And speak in language they recognize. Use words they use. If your message sounds too polished, people disconnect. They assume it's not meant for them. But when it sounds like it came from someone who's been where they are, who's fought the same battles, they listen. You don't need flawless grammar or clever phrasing. You need authenticity. You need to sound like someone who means what they say and says what they mean. It's not just the words, it's how deeply you believe them. If you don't believe your message, no one else will. Your tone reveals your belief. If you give advice you don't live by, people feel it. If you talk about discipline while living without it, your words lose force. But when your message comes from your own standard, it hits harder. That's why your life has to match your words. When it does, your message gains strength without needing volume. People aren't searching for motivation, they're searching for permission to change. They want to know it's okay to leave what's familiar. They want reassurance that it's acceptable to expect more from themselves. And your words can unlock that. Your words can flip the switch, but only if they're direct, honest, and aimed at action. Don't dance around the issue. Don't coat it in sugar. Say what needs to be heard, then challenge them to act on it. Sometimes what moves people isn't inspiration, it's confrontation. You name the thing they've been avoiding. You hold up the mirror. You call it out, not with anger, but with truth. That discomfort becomes the turning point. Many people are waiting for someone to call them higher, not by shouting, not by guilt, but by saying, "You're capable of more and it's time to act like it." Said the right way, that sentence can change a life. And don't fall into the trap of chasing popularity. Say what's necessary, not what's popular. Leaders don't pursue applause, they pursue progress. The room may stay quiet, that's fine. They'll think, they'll sit with it, and if it's real, they'll move. You're not here to entertain, you're here to build something. So speak like someone who accepts responsibility for the impact of their words. And remember, silence carries power. When your words are strong, you don't need many of them. One sentence followed by silence can do more than a 5-minute lecture. It gives the message space to settle. It allows people to respond internally. When your words are true, don't rush to fill the gap. Let them land. Let them echo. You also move people by simplifying things. Complexity creates hesitation, but when you break it down into a clear next step, people feel ready. Say it plainly. Start today. Make the call. Write it down. Fix it now. Don't leave them guessing. Move them from thought to decision, from idea to action, from intention to change. And remember, you don't need to say more. You need to say it better. Don't clutter your message. Don't dull your edge. Address the real problem. Say the things people are afraid to say. Call out the patterns that keep them stuck. Speak what others avoid. That's how leaders communicate. That's how leaders create movement. Because when your words carry truth, urgency, and direction, when your voice is steady, controlled, and confident, when your message stays focused on what truly matters, people stop scrolling, stop hesitating, and start moving. They stop living in delay and start living with intention. Speak in a way that matters. Speak to the part of people that wants more. Speak with enough pressure to wake them up and enough clarity to point the way forward. That's leadership. That's how attention is earned. That's how people are moved, not through noise, but through words that carry weight. And those words must come from a place inside you that's already been changed, because what changes you is what changes others. Speak from that place. Speak from your standards. Speak from your scars. Speak from lessons learned the hard way. That's what sets your voice apart. That's what gives your message meaning. That's what drives action. Chapter 5. Choose powerful words that build respect and attention. This is a skill most people ignore, but every leader must master. People don't follow voices that sound weak, uncertain, or padded with fluff. They follow voices that speak with substance. Strong words aren't harsh words, they're meaningful words, words with weight, words that show you've earned the right to be heard. Every time you speak, you're either strengthening credibility or losing it. You're either gaining attention or being dismissed. It all comes down to word choice. Weak words fade, strong words stay. To speak like a leader, you must understand the impact your words create, not just their definition, but their tone, presence, and force. Strong language commands attention, not by volume, but by precision. When you speak clearly and decisively, people stop and listen. They sense seriousness, they feel confidence. You don't need repetition, you don't need over-explanation. One clear sentence delivered with certainty can shift a conversation, and sometimes a life. Weak language breeds doubt. Phrases like "I think," "maybe," "I guess," or "sort of" drain strength from your message and push people away. Strong words are clean, direct, unambiguous. They show you've decided. You're not floating an idea, you're making a statement, and certainty earns respect. If you're always trying to stay soft, avoid offense, and please everyone, you'll end up saying nothing that matters. People respect clarity. They follow truth, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Strong words aren't about aggression, they're about stability. You don't raise your voice, you raise your standard. That's what makes people listen. Your word choice reflects your standards. If your thinking has settled for average, your words will sound average. But if you've demanded more from yourself, your language will reflect it. Strong words come from a strong mindset. When your thinking is sharp, your speech becomes powerful. If you speak with strength, it's because you've built it internally. You've faced pressure. You've met resistance. You've earned your voice. People don't just want information, they want belief. They want conviction. Doubt-filled words lose people. But when you speak from your core, when you speak from lived experience, people lock in. They can feel the difference between noise and truth. Talk is easy. Truth requires discipline. And when your words are rooted in truth, they can't be ignored. Using strong language also means cutting the filler. Remove phrases that add nothing. You know, kind of, it's like. They weaken impact and create noise. Leadership isn't noise, it's precision. One clear sentence delivered without hesitation outweighs a 10-minute speech full of filler. Say less, say it better. To earn respect when you speak, you must first respect your own words. That means you don't speak just to fill space. You don't talk without thinking. Every sentence should serve a reason. Every word should be chosen on purpose. That's how respect begins. Not only because of what you say, but because of how deliberately you say it. Attention isn't automatic, it's earned. And it's not about flash, it's about solidity. Your words should act like anchors. When you speak, something stays. People carry it with them. They think about it later. Because it wasn't just noise, it was a declaration. If your words disappear the moment they're heard, you're not leading, you're blending in. Leadership language is bold without being careless, confident without being arrogant, and always clear. Clarity is power. If someone has to ask, "What were you trying to say?" you've already lost ground. People follow voices that are easy to understand and impossible to ignore. That's the balance. Strength paired with simplicity. No fluff, no ego, just truth delivered straight. There's something else you need to understand. Strong words must be earned. You can't fake them. If your life doesn't align with your message, your words feel hollow. That's why discipline matters. That's why standards matter. Your voice gains authority from your example. When you've lived what you speak, you don't need to convince anyone. They feel it, they hear it, it's different. You earn attention when your words bring value. Every time you open your mouth, ask yourself, does this help someone think better, act better, or live better? If it doesn't, don't say it. Save your energy for what matters. Leaders don't speak to fill space, they speak to shift something. And when your words consistently add value, people make room for you. They stop scrolling, they stop moving, they listen. Strong words are also honest, not cruel, but direct. You say what needs to be said. You don't hide behind comfort, you don't dress it up, you tell the truth plainly. Most people avoid this. They speak in circles, they soften everything, but leaders speak with firmness. They say, "This isn't working." They say, "This has to change." They say, "Here's what needs to happen." That kind of clarity builds respect. Not everyone will like it, but they'll remember it. And when people remember your words, you gain influence. Not because you forced it, but because you earned it. You spoke with focus, courage, and precision. That's what separates leaders. They don't speak more, they speak stronger. And that strength doesn't come from volume, it comes from control, thought, and responsibility. Every room is full of voices. Most of them blur together, but when someone speaks with weight, depth, and clarity, the room shifts. People turn. That's the goal. Not to be the loudest, but the one people stop for, because what you say carries something real. That's leadership, and it begins with how you speak to yourself. If your inner voice is weak, your outer voice will be too. Strengthen it internally first. No more doubting yourself, no more shrinking. Train your mind to think with strength, and your words will follow. You tell yourself, "I can handle this. I will improve this. I refuse to stay average." When you speak to yourself with strength, you speak to the world the same way. So choose your words carefully. Speak with conviction. Speak with force. Cut the soft language that wastes people's time. Speak to be clear, not liked. Speak to create impact, not to fill silence. Speak from experience, not theory. When your words are strong, people feel it. They listen longer. They trust more. They remember. That's how respect is built. That's how attention is earned. Not through noise, but through clear, solid, real words aimed at what matters. You don't need a crowd. You don't need approval. You need discipline. You need belief. And you need the courage to speak like someone who stands behind every word. That's what leadership sounds like. And that's what people follow. Not just words, but words that lead. Chapter 6. Eliminate weak talk and speak with real strength. That's where everything shifts. Not just how you communicate, but how you live. Because the way you speak reflects how you think, and how you think shapes everything. Weak talk isn't just soft language, it's the habit of speaking from hesitation, fear, and insecurity. The longer you do it, the more it defines you. It becomes part of who you are. But when you decide to drop that language and speak with real strength, you don't just sound different, you become different, sharper, more certain, more respected.
People recognize strength in a voice, not because it's loud, but because it has structure. There's quiet authority in the tone, intention in the delivery, backbone in the message, and that only happens when you stop diluting your speech with phrases that drain credibility. You hear weak talk all the time. "I'm not sure, but hopefully this works." This might sound stupid, but those phrases slip out casually, and every time they do, they send a message. "I don't fully believe what I'm saying." You may not mean that, but that's what people hear. Weak language undercuts your message before it even lands. It introduces doubt, it creates distance, it softens your edge. And if you're trying to lead, influence, or earn trust, that kind of language will cost you. Real vocal strength starts by removing the words that waste your power. You don't need to justify everything. You don't need to shrink your opinion to avoid discomfort. You don't need to sound small to be accepted. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be clear, solid, and strong. And that begins by dropping every phrase that gives people permission to ignore you. You don't need to say, "I just think." If you think it, say it. Don't lead with sorry when you're not sorry for having a point, and stop asking permission with every sentence. When you speak with strength, your words stand on their own. You're not pushing them. You're not begging for attention. You're stating something real without apology, hesitation, or confusion. Strength is not aggression. You don't need to be harsh to be powerful. You don't need to dominate the room. Real strength is calm, controlled, steady. It's you speaking from certainty because you know who you are and you know your words matter. You've thought them through. You've earned them. You're not performing. You're delivering value. And when you speak that way, people respond differently. They interrupt less. They question less. They listen more because strong words hold attention, and attention is currency. It's not given, it's earned. Weak talk loses it. Strong talk earns it. And once you have someone's full attention, that's when impact happens. If you want to lead, you must decide what kind of voice you'll use. Not just the sound, but the structure, the meaning.
The intention. Will it be padded with disclaimers and fillers, or sharp, deliberate, and exact? The truth is, no one is going to fix this for you. If you grew up around hesitant language or worked in places where people avoid saying things directly, it's likely those habits rubbed off on you. But habits can be broken, and this is one worth breaking. Strong communication begins with internal belief. If you don't believe what you're saying, no one else will either. So build your convictions. Think deeply. Question your own thinking. Once you've done that inner work, you'll stop feeling the need to constantly defend yourself on the outside. You won't need volume, you'll need clarity. And clarity is a form of strength. People who rely on weak language often feel invisible, they feel ignored. But many times, it's not the world dismissing them, it's how they present their voice. You teach people how to treat your message. If you treat it as optional, uncertain, or vague, they will too. But when you speak with firmness and clarity, people pause, they think, they notice, and your presence expands. There's also an efficiency factor. Weak talk wastes time. It circles, it rambles, it uses 3 sentences where one would work. Strong speech is direct. It respects time. It gets to the point. That efficiency is another form of strength, how little you need to say to be understood. When you stop trying to impress and focus on truth, your voice becomes cleaner, and clean voices cut through noise faster. You'll feel a shift when you drop weak language. Your posture changes, your energy changes, the way you enter a room changes. You're no longer second-guessing yourself mid-sentence. You're not editing in real time. You're not bracing for judgment. You're delivering something solid, and you know it. That creates freedom, and freedom becomes confidence. Weak talk is rooted in fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of criticism, fear of rejection. But the reality is, if you try to speak in a way that never challenges, never disrupts, never demands anything, your words will never carry weight.
And if your words don't carry weight, you won't lead. So you have to choose. Do you want to be liked or do you want to be effective? You can't always be both. Leadership isn't about comfort, it's about clarity, it's about progress, and that requires strength in how you communicate. It means removing the padding and saying what needs to be said, not recklessly, but with discipline, focus, and intent. Strength isn't used to push people down, it's used to raise standards. But raising standards isn't always gentle. Sometimes strength sounds like challenge, sometimes it sounds like correction, sometimes it sounds like, "That's not acceptable." And sometimes it's silence, standing firm when others expect you to fold. All of that is communication, and all of it begins with eliminating the habits that weaken your presence. Don't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking with strength. Practice in everyday conversations. Remove one soft phrase at a time. Replace "I hope" with "I will." Replace "I guess" with "I've decided." Replace "it might be" with "here's what I see." These small changes compound. They rewire your voice, and over time, your entire presence shifts. Others notice, you notice, and you start operating at a higher level. You don't need to yell, you don't need to argue, you don't need to win every exchange. You need words with backbone, words that show thought, words that show you're not afraid of resistance. And when people hear that, they stop testing you. They start respecting you. That's how strength sounds. Calm, clear, controlled, unmoved. You don't speak for approval. You speak because you have something real to say. And the more you speak that way, the deeper your leadership takes hold. Not because you speak often, but because when you do, it matters. So let go of weak language. Cut the noise, cut the filler. Speak precisely. Speak from your values. Speak with steady confidence. Do it consistently until it's no longer a skill you practice. It's who you are. That's leadership, and it begins with your voice. Chapter 7. Stand firm when others try to shake you. This is what separates true leaders from those who collapse under pressure. Anyone can sound strong when there's no resistance. Anyone can appear confident when things are calm. The real test comes when your beliefs, your words, and your decisions are challenged, when someone questions your position, when your message is pushed back on. That's when your presence is measured.
That's when you discover what your voice is really built on. The world doesn't offer quiet, it offers resistance, and your ability to lead depends on how steady you remain. When resistance shows up, most people break at the first sign of discomfort. The moment someone disagrees, they retreat, they soften their language, they over-explain, they chase approval, and in doing so, they drain the power from their voice. Leadership isn't about getting agreement, it's about standing in truth, even without it. You don't speak to be popular, you speak because it matters. And when something matters, pressure doesn't change it. People will test you, that's inevitable. They'll question your tone, challenge your decisions, twist your words, and you have a choice: stay anchored in clarity or get pulled into uncertainty. If you're shaken every time someone questions you, leadership won't last long. You'll become whatever others want you to be. That isn't leadership, that's insecurity wearing authority. To stand your ground, you must know what you stand on. If you haven't done that work, pressure will expose it. Clarity creates stability. When you've defined your values, your direction, and your message, pressure doesn't cause panic. You don't scramble. You don't adjust your language to please the room. You stay rooted in what you've built inside. You can't borrow strength in those moments. You can't copy confidence. It has to belong to you. That strength is built through repetition, through experience, through speaking when it's uncomfortable. It doesn't appear overnight. You train it, you develop it. Every time you stay calm while someone pushes back, you strengthen it. Every time you stand firm in what you believe, you grow. Not louder, but stronger. That's the difference. Leaders don't raise their voice to prove stability. They speak with calm certainty. That tone cuts through noise better than any debate. People respect what doesn't flinch. If your tone shifts every time the room shifts, trust disappears. People may nod, they may agree out loud, but internally, they know you're unreliable. Respect is earned when your message stays steady under pressure. When you say the same thing in discomfort that you said when it was easy. When your expression doesn't change just because someone else raises their voice. To lead well, you have to be comfortable with discomfort. You have to be willing to stand when others are searching for an exit. That doesn't make you stubborn, it makes you grounded. It shows you've thought things through. It shows you don't need unanimous approval to speak with strength. There will be moments when your voice trembles slightly. That's human, but you still speak. You still hold your position. You stay anchored in your truth. You don't avoid tension, you meet it directly. You show others that disagreement doesn't intimidate you, that challenge doesn't derail you, that someone else's doubt won't make you doubt yourself. That's when leadership becomes visible. Not when you say something inspiring, but when you remain steady while being tested. And the attempts to shake you aren't always loud. Sometimes they're subtle. A raised eyebrow, a smirk, a dismissive glance, a sharp question meant to throw you off balance. You don't respond emotionally. You don't overreact. You stay even. You hold your tone. You remain respectful but unmoved. You don't need to attack to defend your position. You stay rooted. When your voice is built on truth and discipline, it doesn't need protection. It stands on its own. You'll feel when someone is trying to unsettle you. The energy tightens, the room shifts. That's when most people shrink, but that's your moment to rise. Not with louder words, but with deeper steadiness. People notice when someone speaks without flinching, when someone holds their ground without defensiveness, when someone keeps their message clear under pressure. That's the kind of communication people follow, not because it's flawless, but because it's solid. Real strength in communication isn't shown when people agree with you, it's revealed when they don't. When you remain grounded, you teach people something. You show them you're not easily shaken. You show them your words aren't driven by trends, moods, or reactions. You show them that when you speak, there's weight behind it, and people follow that presence. Not hype, not popularity. Presence, something real that doesn't shift every time the room does. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. Some people want conflict, not clarity. Some want reaction, not understanding. That's not your job. Your responsibility is to stay rooted in what matters.
You don't chase approval. You don't beg for agreement. You deliver your message with strength and let the outcome be what it is. There's a quiet power in holding your ground. You don't need many words. You don't need endless justification. Sometimes the strongest move is staying calm and changing nothing at all. That silence carries more weight than 100 explanations. That steadiness communicates more than emotion ever could. And when you do this consistently, when you build the habit of staying solid through disagreement, you become unshakable. Not arrogant, not dismissive, just grounded, present, certain. That's what sharpens a leadership voice. Not volume, but conviction. Not emotion, but clarity. Not control, but consistency. The world is full of noise. People trying to sound important. People talking over one another. People react. What stands out is the person who speaks and stays steady. Someone who knows who they are. Someone who doesn't unravel every time there's disagreement. That person becomes a trusted voice, a clear voice, a voice people return to not because it always says what they want to hear, but because it consistently says what's true. You won't always get applause. That's not the aim. The aim is respect. The aim is impact. The aim is strength. So when someone tries to throw you off, don't let it happen. Don't match their emotion. Don't rush your words. Don't pull back. Hold your tone. Hold your pace. Hold your clarity. Hold your position. That's how trust forms. That's how presence is built.
That's how real leaders are recognized, not by how they speak when everything is comfortable, but by how steady they remain when it isn't. Stay grounded and people start believing in you, not just your words, but you. And once that belief is there, you stop being someone who talks and become someone who leads. Chapter 8. Make your point without dragging it out or over-explaining. This is a discipline every strong communicator must develop. In leadership, your value isn't measured by how much you say, but by how effectively you say it. You don't need long speeches to sound credible. You don't need repetition to be understood. You don't need extra examples to prove your point. When you're clear, one sentence is enough. When your thinking is organized, you don't ramble. And when your presence is solid, you don't rely on length or volume. You rely on precision. People don't have endless attention. Most are distracted before you even begin. When you speak, you're competing with their thoughts, their phones, their stress, and everything else pulling at them. If you stretch your message, if you keep circling the same point, they disengage. And once they disengage, influence is lost. Not because your idea was weak, but because it got buried under too many words. There's a clear difference between being thoughtful and being long-winded. Thoughtful communication is structured, direct, and clear. Long-winded communication is messy, slow, and uncertain. Every extra sentence increases the chance of confusion. That's why effective communicators cut the excess. They say what matters, then they stop and let it land. Over-explaining usually comes from doubt. When people aren't fully confident in what they're saying, they keep adding more. They try to protect the message with detail. They try to control how it's received. But leadership doesn't work that way. You can't control reactions. You can only control delivery. When you speak with confidence and clarity, you don't need a backup explanation. You say it, you trust it, you let it stand. Another reason people over-explain is fear of being misunderstood. They think more words create safety. Often they do the opposite. Too much detail buries the point. Listeners latch onto side comments and miss the core message. Confusion replaces clarity. Leadership communication isn't about control, it's about clarity. Say the truth and let it stand on its own. If you want people to listen to you consistently, become someone who doesn't waste time, yours or theirs. When you speak, people should know they're getting value. They should leave with understanding. That only happens when you discipline yourself to get to the point and stay there. No detours, no padding, no filler. Just truth delivered with strength. Being direct doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean being harsh. It means you respect people's time enough to be efficient. It means you've already done the thinking so others don't have to sort through your words. You're not speaking to fill silence. You're speaking to create movement. Concise speech also builds respect. When you make your point and stop talking, people pay attention, they lean in, they notice, because they're used to rambling explanations and stretched out ideas. A sharp, clean finish feels different, and that difference earns attention. There's strength in brevity. The more confident you are, the fewer words you need. When you trust your message, you deliver it and stand behind it. The power is in simplicity and discipline, saying enough, not too much. That takes practice, but those who master it become the voices people turn to when clarity matters most. You don't need to convince everyone. That urge is where most over-explaining comes from, the need to be accepted. Leadership isn't about acceptance, it's about necessity. Some people will agree, some won't. That's fine. You don't need universal approval. You need understanding from the right people, and that only happens when you don't dilute your message. Ask yourself before you speak, what is this sentence doing? If it doesn't move the message forward, remove it. If it only softens discomfort, reconsider it. If it protects your ego, replace it. Speak with intention, with clarity, with courage. That's what people want. Not a safe version of your truth, but the real one delivered cleanly and briefly.
Every time you speak, you teach people how to listen to you. If you ramble, they tune out. If you're sharp, they lean in. If you repeat yourself, they assume you don't trust their understanding. But if you say something strong once and stop, they think about it, they respect you more, and they listen more closely next time. Don't confuse clarity with shallowness. You can be clear and still be deep. Powerful ideas don't need many words. In fact, the more important the point, the more essential it is to keep it clean. Complexity hides impact. Simplicity reveals it. Think about the strongest voices you've heard, the ones that moved you. They didn't pile on examples. They didn't circle endlessly. They made a clear point with calm authority, and then they stopped. That pause creates space. It allows the message to settle. That's where impact happens, not while you're still talking, but in the silence after. Know your audience. If they already understand the subject, don't overteach. Respect their intelligence. Take them further. If they're new to it, explain only what they need, nothing more. Don't overload them. Guide them. Real communication isn't about saying everything. It's about saying the right thing at the right time in the right way. That requires trimming, sharpening, and discipline. Before you speak, get clear internally. Know your point before you open your mouth. That inner clarity turns into outer confidence, and that's why your message connects. There's no reward for talking the longest. There's no recognition for using the most words. The real reward comes from being understood, from creating impact, from helping someone think clearer, move quicker, decide sooner. That happens when you deliver your point with discipline and strength, when you remove the extras and trust your message to stand on its own. If what you're saying is true, it doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need backup explanations. It doesn't need endless reinforcement. It needs clarity, it needs belief, and it needs you to stop talking once it's been said. Speak to move. Speak to guide. Speak with strength. Say what matters, then stop. Let the silence handle the rest. That's how leaders communicate. That's how voices grow. That's how influence is built, not through long speeches, but through meaningful words spoken clearly and left to echo in people's minds. Chapter 9. Speak to be remembered, not just heard. That's where real influence begins. Talking is easy. Everyone does it. The world is full of noise, voices, and constant conversation. But being remembered, that's different. That takes purpose, intention, discipline. People hear thousands of words every day, but only a few stay with them. The ones that last are clear, direct, and delivered with weight. When you speak like a leader, you're not filling air, you're leaving a mark. You want your words to stay with people after you leave the room. To be remembered, you must say something worth remembering. That means cutting shallow talk. Don't speak just to react. Don't speak to show how much you know. Speak because you have something solid to offer, something that helps, shifts perspective, sparks a decision, leaves someone better than before. That kind of communication takes thought. You don't wing it.
You don't speak just because it's your turn. You speak when it matters. And when you do, you deliver it with strength. Your voice becomes your signature. People won't remember every sentence, but they'll remember how you made them feel. They'll remember if you made them pause, if you raised their standards, if your words help them break out of hesitation, confusion, or fear. That's what being remembered really means. It's not about entertaining, it's about elevating. Being memorable starts with clarity around what you believe. People remember conviction. They remember certainty. If you're unsure, your message fades. But when you speak from what you've lived, what you know, what shaped you, it sticks. You don't need volume. You need truth. Real, tested, honest truth. That's what cuts through noise. You don't need perfect sentences to create impact. You need a message that's simple and strong. Don't complicate what should be clear. Don't try to impress. Say it the way people think. Say it the way they speak. Say it so they can carry it with them.
The easier your message is to repeat, the more powerful it becomes, because people won't just hear it, they'll pass it on. That's how your voice travels. Your words should stay with someone long after the moment ends. They should echo in their decisions, challenge their excuses, remind them of what matters. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you choose every word deliberately, when you respect your message enough to say it right the first time, when you're bold enough to say what others avoid. People are hungry for words that matter. They're tired of fake motivation, tired of surface-level talk, tired of vague advice. They want clarity. They want strength. They want someone to say what they've been thinking but couldn't articulate. They want someone to speak to their future, not their comfort. That's your role. You fill that space. You give them language they didn't know they needed. Being heard is about presence. Being remembered is about purpose. You must know why you're speaking. What do you want them to leave with? What shift are you creating? What decision are you calling them toward? Without that clarity, you'll talk in circles. You'll use 10 sentences when one would do. But when your message is sharp, delivery becomes natural. Impact is built into your words. You don't need a stage to speak with meaning. Every conversation is an opportunity to be remembered. Every meeting, every message, every moment someone is listening, that's where leadership grows. And it grows fastest when you stop trying to sound good and start speaking truths. No performance, no filler, just honest, grounded communication. Keep your sentences clean, your message simple, your presence strong. That's how you build a voice that matters. That's how people start repeating your words, not because they asked you to, but because they stuck, because they landed, because they were real. Don't be forgotten 5 minutes after the meeting ends. Don't fill time with empty talk. Be the one who shifts the room with a single clear sentence. Be the one who changes the atmosphere, not with emotion, but with authority. Be the one whose words stay with someone the next morning. That's leadership communication. It doesn't fade, it lives on. And it's not about fancy language, it's about strong delivery. It's about respecting the weight of your words. Don't waste them. Don't repeat yourself. Don't wander. Stay on message. Make it land. Make it matter. Even in casual conversations, speak like someone who values their voice. Speak like someone who knows their message might lift someone out of a low place. Speak like someone who lives by their beliefs. That's what people remember. That's what people trust. Don't try to impress. Try to impact. Impressing fades. Impact lasts. When you speak from your truth, your experience, your life, people feel it. They pause. They think. They remember. Every time you speak, you plant seeds. Some grow quickly, some take time, but they grow if the message is real. So stop saying more. Start saying what matters. Say it clean, say it strong, then stop. Let it echo. Let it settle. Let it live. That's how you speak to be remembered. That's how your voice becomes something people hold on to. That's leadership. Not noise, but words that last. Chapter 10. Train your voice daily until leadership becomes natural. This is the discipline most people ignore. They want strength when it counts, but they haven't practiced in quiet moments. They want authority, but they haven't built the habit of intentional speech.
If you want your voice to guide, influence, and create impact, you must train it like a skill. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, every day. Leadership doesn't appear out of nowhere, it's built through repetition. Power isn't accidental, it's intentional. Your voice is a tool. The more you refine your voice, the sharper it becomes. The more consciously you use it, the more it aligns with your intent. But when you speak without discipline, your voice loses shape, it turns reactive. Emotion starts driving it instead of clarity. That's why the real work happens in everyday conversations, the ordinary moments when no one is watching, when it's just you explaining a thought, speaking up, correcting something, guiding someone, or simply holding a steady tone. That's the training. That's where strength is built. If your voice only sounds confident when everything is calm, but breaks down under discomfort, then it hasn't been trained enough. If your message is clear with no pressure, but turns scattered when challenged, then it hasn't been tested. Leading with your voice means developing it until it holds in any room, under any pressure, with any audience. That doesn't come from theory, it comes from showing up daily and doing the work, improving how you speak, how you deliver, how you connect. Start by being intentional every time you talk. Pay attention to how you sound. Are you rushing? Using filler? Does your tone match your message? Are your sentences tight and clear? This isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. Awareness creates growth. And the more you notice, the more you improve. Speak like it matters, even in casual moments. Speak like you're leading, even in one-on-one conversations. Speak like someone who owns their voice, not someone hoping it lands well. You don't need a stage to train your voice. You need discipline. You need consistency. Practice on phone calls. Practice when giving feedback. Practice when making requests. Say what you mean. Speak with intent. Remove the excess. Stay present in your tone. That's the grind most people avoid. They wait for the big moment, believing they'll rise when it arrives. But if you haven't trained, pressure won't elevate you. It will expose you. It will reveal the gaps you can't fix in the moment. Those gaps are fixed beforehand, when no one's watching. Your voice mirrors your thinking. When your thinking is clear, your words follow. That's why training your voice also means training your mind. Learn to think in simple, strong statements. Focus your thoughts. Clear the clutter. Discipline your internal language so your external communication becomes sharper. Then, when it's time to speak, you're not building clarity on the spot. It's already there, you're just releasing it. You also need to get comfortable with silence. Part of vocal training is knowing when not to speak. Pauses matter. Stillness carries presence. Most people fear silence and rush to fill it. But a trained voice understands that silence is strength. It gives your words room to breathe. It lets the message settle. It shows control, not just over what you say, but when you say it. Tone can be trained just like posture. Keep it grounded, not high, not weak, just steady. You're not copying anyone else. You're developing your real voice, the one that carries authority without raising volume, that speaks directly without hesitation. That comes from repetition, from practice, from saying things out loud until your voice learns what strength feels like. It's not only what you say, it's how you say it. Delivery matters. If your voice shakes, people notice. If your words drag, attention fades. If your tone sounds uncertain, your message gets questioned. But when your voice is trained, it becomes effortless, natural. People don't even realize you're leading. They simply follow because you've built a rhythm, a tone, a presence that guides without force. Training your voice also builds real confidence, not borrowed confidence, but earned confidence, the kind that comes from repetition. You know your sound, you know how to stay calm under pressure, you know how to make a point without losing yourself. That self-trust shows up in your speech, and people feel it. They may not know why they listen to you, they just know they do. There will be days you don't feel strong, days you're tired, days you're unsure. That's when training carries you. The habits take over. You don't fake strength. You've practiced it. You've spoken clearly when it was uncomfortable. You've held your tone when it would have been easier to fold. That's the power of training. It creates consistency. Your leadership no longer depends on mood, it depends on preparation. You don't build a strong voice by avoiding difficult conversations. You build it by stepping into them with intention, composure, and control. You don't raise your voice to get attention, you raise your standard. And when you speak, that standard comes through. People hear the difference. They hear the work behind your tone, the thought behind your message, the truth behind your delivery. That's what makes a voice lead. When you train your voice daily, you stop trying to lead. You simply do.
It becomes part of who you are. You don't think about tone, you live in it. You don't think about structure, it flows. You don't second-guess your words, you speak from alignment. That's the goal. Not to impress, not to perform, but to be so practiced, so grounded, so consistent that leadership shows up without effort. And remember, your voice reflects your character. How you speak reveals what you've built inside. If your words are honest, your tone will be steady. If your message is true, your delivery will be strong. If your purpose is real, your presence will follow. But none of it happens without training. No shortcuts, no pretending, just daily effort, daily improvement, daily clarity. One sentence at a time, one conversation at a time, one adjustment at a time. That's how your voice develops. That's how your presence deepens. That's how leadership becomes undeniable. Not because you said the most, but because you trained the most. Because you respected your voice enough to build it every day, until one day you speak and people follow. Not because they were told to, but because they want to. Because your voice didn't push, it pulled. Because it didn't perform, it guided. Because it didn't shake, it led. And that's when your voice becomes more than sound. It becomes influence. It becomes power. It becomes leadership. Natural, strong, and real.